Teachers reveal after-hour secrets they're not allowed to tell students. Story 1. My mom teaches middle school math. It's not her fault, but she is absolutely horrible at math. She's a special education teacher and never wanted to teach math. Unfortunately, the math department was short a teacher, so she picked up a class. Fortunately, they put a large group of the special education kids in the class. I think she would be in trouble if they knew that I have had to help her with the math on multiple occasions. But on the plus side, since she doesn't immediately understand it, she can see where her students would mess up. She can sympathize why they don't understand things a lot better than most people. Edit, a lot of people misunderstood me. My mother is not stupid, and I would prefer if people would stop commenting that she is. She is not good at math, but she is a great teacher. I come from a family of teachers. We are very good at getting people to understand things. My life goal is to eventually become a college professor. Having a teacher who is not good at math in school is better for a class of students who aren't good at math. If the teacher now understands math, he or she can explain better to the students than a teacher who is naturally good at math. But this kind of teacher is horrible for kids who are naturally good at math. The teacher won't understand how the kids make leaps or shortcuts and will be annoyed at them for not showing their work. A teacher not immediately understanding a subject does not mean they're a bad teacher, but a teacher for students who don't immediately understand things. I'm good at math and suck at teaching because I can use all these shortcuts that make sense to me, but not everyone else. So I can see why your mom's a good teacher. Oh God, yes. My husband is a math-minded person, but our daughter is not. She's in pre-algebra this year, and he keeps trying to get her to use all kinds of shortcuts. I could have kissed her teacher when, at conferences, he very kindly told my husband that our daughter needs to learn all the steps and why we use them before she learns the shortcuts. Since October, there haven't been any more tears over math homework. Story 2. Kinda relevant story. I was having a really rough semester dealing with depression, a full-time job, and a boatload of units at a community college since I couldn't afford tuition at my university. Not unique problems by any means, I know, and went to my middle-aged Calc 3 professor to try and work something out about my rapidly dropping grade. I told him times were rough and how sorry I was that I had to pick up shifts in lieu of attending his class so that I could make rent. He looked at me and said he understood, then started tearing up and saying he had to pick up a part-time job at Applebee's to make his own ends meet, and how embarrassed he was that he had to wait on a few of his students during the semester. He talked about how when students would recognize him, they would tease him about it during their meal, asking why he couldn't get an engineering job or something, since he was such a math whiz. As I was leaving, he told me to please not tell anyone. Broke my heart to see him cry, and made me reevaluate my own problems. Aw, poor guy. I don't know why people are so mean sometimes. It's a sad state of the world where a guy who's educating people has to take a side job to stay afloat. Story 3. Not me, but my MS office teacher was a pretty gruff guy, always had a raspy throat, coughed, etc. My dad worked at the local newspaper as the head editor, so he knew everything that went on in our tiny Idaho county. Turns out my teacher had a record of 5 DUIs, some of which were pretty bad. Once he hit a Stone Country Club sign, lost a wheel, drove 3 miles home, dragging someone's mailbox. A cop followed his antifreeze trail and knocked on the door. My teacher's son answered, told the cop to wait there, and left. But the cop came in anyway, so he was cleared of all charges. The funniest part of the whole story, he was the school's driver's ed teacher. Today I learned high schools now have Microsoft Office teachers. You have to take it twice actually, once in middle school and once in high school. It basically consists of entering numbers into Excel for 8 weeks straight, then making and correcting poopy PowerPoint and Word documents. Source, I'm 16. Friend of mine is a DJ for all the main clubs in the area. I'm sure most of his students are too wasted to even realize he's playing the music they drink to. Story 4. Her favorite story is of the teacher who made an entire presentation about Napoleon ice cream and how it's 3 flavors because Napoleon himself could never choose, followed by a lesson entirely consisting of made-up BS about Napoleon. I guess she never read that it's actually Neapolitan ice cream. There are many similar stories. This is the highest-rated school district in the state, too. I evaluate teachers professionally. I've seen some amusing things, like a teacher selecting Samurai of Ancient China as the best essay from her class. Good Lord, that is sad. Some of the most common things my mom witnesses are emails and handwritten notes with major spelling and grammatical errors, words corrected on spelling tests to the wrong spelling, and silly misinformation related to history and science, kind of like samurai in China. She walks in on completely out-of-control classrooms on a weekly basis to a teacher sitting at their desk like nothing is going on. Perhaps there's a correlation between this story and the second story. You think if maybe teachers were paid better, then they would actually be bothered to put in the massive amount of effort that's required to handle a classroom full of kids? Or perhaps if schools had better budgets, they could afford to hire more competent teachers. At the end of the day, I think you get what you pay for. It seems a lot of young teachers who are passionate about the job at first are high-quality educators, but as the years go on and they don't get treated fairly for the effort that they do put in, they learn to not bother, and you're left with mediocrity. Story 5. I let my students off the hook, all the time. I have no interest in busting a kid for swearing, etc., as long as they weren't being disrespectful to me in the first place. Far too many teachers are just there to create obedient little automatons, much like they are themselves. Now, keep in mind, if I see a kid doing something really dongish, even if it's small, I'll go out of my way to set them straight. I'm there to create genuine, empathetic, and independent individuals, and I think this means the ability to make some mistakes along the way. I write down the stuff kids say because it's often hilarious, and I'd like to write a book on it one day. The other day, for instance, I'm in a grade 1 class, and the student says to me, "You look exactly like the guy that sleeps with my mom." Story 6. I don't care when they get all ticky-offy and throw tantrums. They're learning and growing, and one day they will understand. Right now, they need to yell and do whatever to establish their identity. But no matter what, I won't hate them and will always be there to help them. They can't know about this now because they don't understand why, and they need to make their mistakes. One day, though, I hope they understand, and what little I may or may not have taught them will carry on for the rest of their lives. That's not a secret. That just makes you a freaking fantastic teacher. Story 7. Native English teacher in a non-English speaking country here. Teaching elementary age. I begin each class by saying, "Good morning, class," to which they respond, "Good morning, teacher." Sometimes, if I feel the energy level is low or the response is mediocre, I will say louder, "Good morning, class." This will usually elicit a, "Good morning, teacher." What my students don't know is that sometimes I'll aim for them to repeat loudly so as to mask a wicked fart I need to let out. Has your timing ever been off? Teacher. Story 8. I would prefer they didn't know I cleaned houses for money on weekends, or that a couple weeks after school is out for the semester, some teachers go through the lost and found box before it goes to charity. Nothing real crazy. Honestly, teachers that I work with are too busy to have too many secrets, and the few nutjob educators don't last long. I guess I would never want my students to know that some of their parents are buttholes, and because of their incompetent parenting, life will be harder. Story 9. I have a good friend who teaches high school. He feels the need to hide that he plays Dungeons & Dragons and other RPGs. It's a sad state of the world we live in. Had a teacher admit that he had a Steam account and played RPGs, everyone, me included, was begging for his account name. Had a teacher at my high school that played Xbox all the time. One of my friends was able to get her gamer tag and showed it to me. Her gamer score was in the 100,000s. Story 10. All the people I knew who were going to be teachers after college were drunken, drugged-up, liberal hormone monsters bent on debauchery. I'm not shocked by the idea that teachers only pretend to be conservative in front of their students. No, don't say that. My sister is in a master's degree program for education. No, ew. Your sister loves reverse cowgirl. Story 11. I'm not a teacher, but as a student, about 20 years ago, we did discover that one of my grade school gym coaches was on American Gladiators when some of us saw the episode one snow day. We worshipped her after that. It was Blaze, wasn't it? I had her as a sub about 3 months before I graduated. It couldn't have been Blaze. She was my high school PE teacher, and where I went to. Story 12. We had a female English teacher that was a bodybuilder. She became a corn star. No joke. Had a student teacher in high school who disappeared in the middle of her co-op because some poophead found her in a camgirl ad and posted copies of the ad around the school. She was such a sweet girl and a great teacher, but I don't think she stuck with it after that. Ah, man, high school is hell. Story 13. I've hooked up with some of their moms. I'm teaching in a small town where I also grew up. It happens. Still, I don't talk about it. Hey, Timmy, I screwed your mom. He should use that as punishment. Every time the student gets something wrong, he adds a detail of when he boned her. What's 2 plus 2? 3? And then, when I was about to finish, I grabbed her bloobies and said... Story 14. Had a middle school science teacher who threw pencils and had girls pick them up, moved blossoming girls to the front row, and later got busted for having corn on his computer. Edit, his name was Dr. Torrey. The amount of, did you go to my school, / is this my teacher, comments on this is amazing. I was actually going to ask that too. Seems like it's a big problem. Story 15. A school that is close to where I live just recently found out that a teacher of theirs participated in a red rum in another state a while back. I think she had a name change or something, and that is why it never came up until recently. Story 16. My old English teacher would assign mandatory reading times to his English class. A year later, I was in calculus, which shared a door with his class. His class was doing mandatory reading, so we popped in to say hi, only to see that he was playing Lego Star Wars on his computer. He turns around and says, shh. Story 17. Japanese ALT here. I can only remember the girls' names because the boys all go to the same Vulcan hairstylist and I can't tell them apart. The great thing about Vulcan hairstylists is that they're too logical to make idle conversation while doing your hair. Freaking knew Professor Oak asked it for a reason. Story 18. I left teaching a few years ago, but I would never have wanted my third graders to know I did most of my grading at the local pub and shared the most ridiculous assignments with the regulars. Did you ever run into any of their parents? Did you ever spill beer on a kid's assignment? Story 19. Using a number 1 pencil. They'd all be crushed if they found out it wasn't a number 2 pencil. Those exist? Indeed they do. The numbers indicate the hardness of the pencil core, made of a mixture of graphite and clay. The higher the number, the harder the lead. Story 20. Probably late, but my second grade teacher told me when I started high school that she would make Sims out of her students. Her least favorite students would be isolated in a room without doors and just left to die, while her favorite students would live. Story 22. My mom is a teacher. One of her coworkers got hooked on meth, then switched professions and became a prostitute to feed the addiction. I don't know if that counts though. Yeah, it isn't that surprising. Story 23. I was a teacher in Korea and was concerned students would find my stand-up comedy online. It's not exactly appropriate. Story 24. My freshman history teacher from high school got nailed on the 50-yard line back when she was a student at the same high school. This was confirmed by another teacher after I graduated. Story 25. My mom works at an elementary school and directs their before and after program. Apparently, the big secret is that half of elementary school teachers are skull-splitting morons. Story 26. When my stepdad was going through cancer treatment, my mother, who's an elementary teacher, got hash oil from another teacher in her school to help with the pain. Story 27. Teacher here. I'm 35-year-old male, and I still play with Legos. In my storage closet at school, I have all the new Hobbit Legos. Hashtag Thug Life. Story 28. I'm not a teacher, but I did find one of my teachers on Grindr once. Good thing you weren't homeschooled, right? Story 30. That I do not have a direct line to Santa, the Easter Bunny, or any other gift-giving entity. Story 31. Primary school teacher here. Sometimes I file their busy work in my other filing cabinet, the rubbish bin. Story 32. I drop acid all the time. So you're a clumsy chemistry teacher. Or just not as basic. Story 33. Today I learned when I thought my teachers were on drugs, I was probably right. Story 34. Physics professor by day, professional belly dancer by night. Their brains would explode. Story 35. That we do talk about them in the lounge. I knew it. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.